First American-Turkish Relations 1. How did the U.S. and the Ottoman Empire meet? Chapter 1. Piracy in the Mediterranean and First Contacts, 1780s-1815. America's early years on the world stage were shaped in the dangerous waters of the Mediterranean rather than at diplomatic tables. This period was a painful introductory phase revolving around tribute, piracy, and naval construction, where the young republic's struggle for survival at sea intersected with the Ottoman Empire's autonomous provinces in North Africa. The United States' gaining of independence from Great Britain in 1783 was also the harbinger of an unexpected crisis for the young nation's commercial activities in the Mediterranean. For American merchant ships, having lost the protection of the British Royal Navy, were left completely vulnerable to the activities of the provinces of Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli, known as the Barbary States, of the Ottoman Empire, whose economies relied heavily on inspections and transit taxes. As American ships began to be seized and their crews taken prisoners starting in 1785, the U.S. government, which did not yet have a strong navy, was forced to seek a solution in diplomacy, signing the Treaty of Tripoli, Algiers, with the Dey of Algiers, Hassan Pasha, in 1795. This was the first and only treaty in American history signed in a foreign language, namely Ottoman Turkish, and which accepted the payment of regular taxes, tribute, and hostage ransoms to a foreign state. However, the profound discomfort created in the American public by the obligation to pay tribute to a foreign state gave rise to the sentiment, millions for defense, but not 1 cent for tribute, becoming the greatest driving force behind the establishment of a permanent and modern United States Navy. Following the self-confidence brought by its growing military power and the endless new tax demands of the Pasha of Tripoli, President Thomas Jefferson set diplomacy aside and sent the new navy to the Mediterranean, sparking the First and Second Barbary Wars between 1801 and 1815. This chain of conflicts, which resulted in military successes such as the historic landing of the U.S. Marines in Derna, enabled the U.S. to completely stop paying tribute to the Barbary States, proved that the young country was an actor capable of projecting power beyond its borders on the world stage, and demonstrated to American diplomacy that the permanent solution, following the crises with these provinces, was to establish direct and official commercial relations with Istanbul, the central authority of the Ottoman Empire. Chapter 2. The Beginning of Official Diplomacy and Trade, 1830. After overcoming the crises in North Africa through military means, the route was turned to the heart of the empire, namely Istanbul. This phase was a period of pragmatic diplomacy where commercial interests, the desire to open up to the Black Sea, and the Ottoman Empire's need to modernize its navy came together to build the first official bridges between the two capitals. Following the United States' overcoming of the piracy crises in the Mediterranean with military force, its need to establish contact directly with the Sublime Porte, the central authority of the Ottoman Empire, in order to permanently secure its commercial interests, laid the foundation for official diplomatic relations between the two countries. The Washington administration, which wanted to secure the lucrative fig, grape, and opium trade conducted primarily through Izmir and to reach the rich Black Sea ports that had been closed to American ships until then, turned the Ottoman Empire's dire situation into a diplomatic opportunity. As the Ottoman navy had been burned by European powers during the Battle of Navarino in 1827 and desperately needed new ships. Despite the efforts of European powers, especially Great Britain, to prevent American ships from entering the Black Sea, secret and lengthy negotiations resulted in the signing of the Treaty of Navigation and Commerce on May 7, 1830, between 3 American representatives and the Ottoman Minister of Foreign Affairs, Resul Qutb Mehmed Hamid Effendi. While this historic treaty granted the U.S. most favored nation status and provided American merchants with the capitulation rights enjoyed by Europeans as well as access to the Black Sea, behind the scenes of the treaty lay a secret article stipulated by the Ottomans requiring the U.S. to build warships for the Ottoman Navy. Although the rejection of this secret article by the U.S. Senate on the grounds that it violated the country's neutrality policy caused a brief diplomatic crisis in Istanbul, the commercial parts of the treaty remained in effect, and the U.S. appointed its first official representative, charge d'affaires David Porter, to Istanbul in 1831, flying the American flag in the capital. Even though the official construction of warships was canceled at the state level, civilian American naval engineers like Henry Eckford and Foster Rhodes came to Istanbul at the special invitation of Sultan Mahmud II and built the most modern warships of the era for the Ottoman Navy at the Golden Horn shipyard, thus realizing military technology transfer in a pragmatic way through civilian channels. Despite all these rapid American diplomatic and commercial breakthroughs, the Ottoman Empire, whose foreign policy priorities were entirely focused on Europe, sent its first official ambassador, Edouard Black Bey, to Washington in 1867, exactly 37 years after the treaty, clearly revealing the asymmetry in the diplomatic understanding of the era and the initially one-sided nature of the relationship. Chapter 3: Missionaries, Schools, and Soft Power, Second Half of the 19th Century. The most lasting and transformative impact between the two countries was created neither by soldiers nor diplomats, but rather by teachers, doctors, and clergymen. The second half of the 19th century was the era of soft power, in which America established a massive educational and healthcare network across Ottoman geography, leaving deep marks on the empire's social structure and minority nationalism. As a result of the wave of religious enthusiasm known as the Second Great Awakening in the United States in the early 19th century, the American Board of Commissioners for Foreign Missions, ABCFM, founded in 1810, set the Ottoman Empire, which housed the Holy Land, as one of its main targets, adding a brand new and profound dimension to the relations between the two countries. Because, thanks to the capitulation rights and passport security provided by the 1830 treaty, American missionaries were able to travel freely and acquire property in Ottoman territories. However, since converting Muslims was forbidden and subject to heavy penalties, they changed their strategy and turned to Christian minorities within the empire, such as Armenians, Greeks, Bulgarians, and Syriacs, and embarked on the construction of a massive soft power, using schools rather than weapons, with the aim of Protestantizing these ancient Eastern churches. The greatest success of the missionaries, who had opened hundreds of modern educational institutions across Anatolia and Rumelia by the late 19th century, such as Central Turkey College in Antep, Euphrates College in Harput, and Anatolia College in Merzifon, was Robert College, founded in Istanbul in 1863 by missionary Cyrus Hamlin and businessman Christopher Robert, which held the title of being the first American higher education institution outside the borders of the United States and had a secular inclination. Supported by printing presses that published millions of pages of the Bible in local languages and different alphabets, and hospitals that brought modern medicine to the inner parts of Anatolia, this massive educational network did not just teach reading and writing but deeply fueled separatist nationalist movements by instilling ideas from the American Declaration of Independence, such as freedom, equality, and self-determination, into Christian minority youth. So much so that Robert College graduates played a leading role in the establishment of independent Bulgaria, while the intellectual influence of these schools on the flourishing of Armenian nationalism became a growing threat to the integrity of the empire. Especially during the reign of Sultan Abdul Hamid II, the Ottoman state viewed these institutions as hotbeds of ideas aimed at dismantling the empire and implemented strict control policies to restrict their activities, which frequently caused diplomatic crises between the two countries over sanctions against schools or the arrest of missionaries. Yet, beyond all these political and social fault lines, American culture managed to infiltrate the region, and with sports like basketball and baseball, and modern medical practices entering the Ottoman geography for the first time through these missionary campuses, indelible cultural marks were left on the daily life of the empire. Chapter 4: World War I and Severed Ties, 1914 to 1917. This is the final act where political, commercial, and cultural ties, meticulously woven over more than a century, were severed in the shadow of a global devastation. This period is a unique concluding tale where rising nationalism and total war pitted both states against each other. Yet, through an interesting diplomatic maneuver, they avoided officially declaring war on one another. With the war bells beginning to toll in Europe in 1914, Ottoman-American relations, already tense due to the nationalist movements fueled by missionary schools, experienced their first major shock when the Ottoman Empire unilaterally declared the abolition of the capitulations in September 1914, which had been a noose around its neck for years, and subjected American institutions to local courts and the tax system. Shortly after, the Empire's entry into World War I on the side of Germany suddenly transformed the Embassy of the United States, which was maintaining its neutrality at the time, and Ambassador Henry Morgenthau into a highly critical diplomatic center that was also forced to protect the rights of British, French, and Russian citizens departing the country. During the fiercest days of the war in 1915, ties reached the breaking point with the forced migration, deportation, of the Armenian population in Anatolia, and the American missionaries scattered across Anatolia reporting these events to the capital and Washington via telegrams created a massive backlash in the American public, leading to the establishment of an organization called Near East Relief, which collected millions of dollars in donations and suddenly turned the soft power America had built until then into a potent instrument of political pressure. By 1917, when German submarines sank American ships, the U.S. broke its neutrality and declared war on Germany on April 6, which, due to alliance obligations, resulted in the Ottoman Empire officially severing diplomatic relations between the two countries on April 20, 1917, by handing the American charge d'affaires his passport. However, behind this historic rupture lay a highly pragmatic diplomatic chess game. Because President Woodrow Wilson did not want the millions of dollars worth of missionary investments in Anatolia to be damaged, and because the Committee of Union and Progress, Ittihad v. Taraki administration, already fighting on multiple fronts, hesitated to directly confront a fresh and massive power like America, the two states never officially declared war or drew weapons against each other. Thus, this century-old adventure, which started with pirate crises in the Mediterranean and extended deep into Anatolia with educational mobilizations, entered a dark period of uncertainty accompanying the collapse of the empire, leaving its place to a brand new network of relations that would be re-established in 1927 after the proclamation of the Republic.